be a nation of kings and priests. He chose Israel to reveal his glory into the earth. He chose Israel so that his name could be glorified in the earth to all the nations, to all the people. He wanted Israel to be a nation of kings and priests, whereby through Israel, his goodness could be revealed to the world. And through his goodness being revealed to the world through Israel, what would happen is Israel would inherit the Gentiles. Israel would inherit the nations, meaning that through the glory of God being revealed through them, the nations would come to God through them. The Gentiles would be brought in through them. God desired that Israel would glorify his name, and then the nations would see the glory of God through Israel, and then they would come to God through Israel, revealing his glory. And so they would inherit the Gentiles, they would inherit the nations, they would inherit the earth. Okay? But they were barren. They hadn't inherited anything. Okay? And so they were barren, and then one comes according to the seed of David after the flesh, and he comes and he is going to now inherit the nations. He's going to now inherit the earth. He's going to now bring the Gentiles in. One according to the seed of David, according to the flesh, he's going to come and he's going to reveal the glory of God in the earth. He's going to magnify the Father. He's going to glorify the grace of God in the earth, and the Gentiles are going to come in through him, through that seed, and so you won't be barren any longer. Israel. And I could get into a lot of talking about Israel right there. But Israel right there is not talking according just to the flesh. It's talking according to the Spirit. Amen. Israel there. It's talking about the nation of God. But specifically, in that verse, the physical nation of Israel was chosen to magnify the glory of God in the earth by revealing the grace in God's eyes, but they didn't see the grace in God's eyes, and so they were never able to reveal the grace of God to the world. So they were barren. They hadn't inherited the Gentiles. Okay, so what happened is, when God found Israel, they were not a people. They were in bondage to the Egyptians. They were in bondage to Pharaoh. The Hebrews were enslaved to people. And what it says is that God walked by Israel when they were in bondage to Pharaoh, when they were in bondage to Egypt, and that God beheld beauty in them. It says that he loved them. And it says that because he loved them, he chose them unto himself. And what it's saying there is God came to them while they were in bondage to Egypt, and he grabbed Israel by the hand, and he led them out of Egypt. And he washed them clean. And he spread his skirt over them and betrothed himself to them. And he led them out of Egypt, and he fed them with manna. And he poured water out of the rock. And he fed them with grace. He gave them his grace as their food for life. Okay? And what he wanted to do with Israel is he wanted to take a people that the whole world could see was enslaved. And then what he wanted to do was take that people and make that people the most glorious nation in the whole earth. All by his grace. So that all the nations could behold the grace of God and what the grace of God can do inside of something in Israel. And that when they could behold God's goodness to take a people that was nothing and make them this, that they would see the glory of God, that God would be glorified in their eyes as only being good, as only being the ones that will give them life, as being the only one who's the possessor of life, as being the only one that can give life. And that through that, the Gentiles would behold that, and that they would come to God that way. That's what God wanted. He wanted a kingdom, he wanted a nation of kings and priests. You see, but Israel didn't see that God's eyes were filled with grace. They were carnal and sold under sin. And so they didn't see the grace in God's eyes. They didn't see that his grace was their food for life. And what happened was they weren't intimate with God. They went off and they fornicated with the flesh. Their intimacy was not with God, and so God's fruit was not born in them. Their intimacy was with the flesh, and the flesh cannot give birth to life. And so Israel found itself in the place where they had not inherited the nations. They had not inherited the earth because they were barren. Does that make sense?
Yes, totally.